Venice is never short of stories. Every street has a tale to tell, every stone a ghost. This one began with a face at a first-floor window. A young fellow, pale, stubbly features, gaunt, startled to be seen even for a fleeting second as he dashed away, vanishing behind the cracked and dusty tracery glass. Perhaps a spectre, a phantom. So a few of those around me might have thought. Or just my imagination, sparked by the curious day and the even more curious Palazzo, where I'd found myself.
Richard Armitage narrating the opening of the Borgia Portrait, brilliantly as usual. Venice is definitely never short of stories, and every street does have a tale to tell, along with a good few ghosts. Stories have layers, the best ones anyway, and so do books. There might be a chase, a mystery, perhaps the chance of a love affair. Yet what lies underneath, the subterranean narrative, is what gives a tale its depth. I always try to remember that when I start on something new. The top level of the Borgia Portrait, Arnold Clover's second outing, is relatively straightforward. An impoverished young Englishwoman, Lizzie Hawker, has turned up in Venice looking to take control of her legacy, a rotting palazzo on the Grand Canal, once owned by her mother, long missing, presumed dead. But someone else, a rich Venetian, has a claim on the place too, and it's Arnold's job to lead Lizzie through the complexities of Venetian life and try to find the thing she seeks most, the truth about what happened to her parents when they were briefly a starry couple on the Grand Canal. Then there's the story beneath. I set myself a challenge with this book. I wanted a riddle to be at the heart of it, a puzzle, one Arnold and Lizzie had to solve in order to win her the prize. But I also wanted that riddle to be rooted in Venice itself, both the questions and the solutions. It's such a cryptic place once you move beyond the obvious, the sights and places casual visitors see before moving on. I felt the riddle should reflect the complexity and the mysteries that lurk beneath that familiar surface. There are 8 parts to the puzzle Lizzie and Arnold have been left in a manuscript found by a corpse, ostensibly written by Casanova. All of them have to do with sights most visitors miss, so let me reveal them here. If you haven't read the book, be warned, these are spoilers, best after you've already read the story. If you have, then I hope they add a touch of richness to the experience. A lot of shoe leather went into researching the Borgia Portrait over several trips. Let me retrace my steps now, beginning with the first clue. By the condottiero's fearsome gaze, Il Gobbo writhes naked in his glassy tomb. Translations first. A condottiero was a mercenary general back in the time Italy wasn't Italy, but a ragtag collection of bellicose city-states. Il Gobbo means the hunchback. You may recall Shakespeare used the name for a comic character in The Merchant of Venice, not that he defines him as a hunchback. There is one quite prominent character who goes by the name of Gobbo in Venice. You'll find him in front of the church of San Giacomo, near the Rialto markets, a rather sorry-looking crouched figure in marble, dating from the 16th century. It was once used as a podium and as a finishing point for criminals chased and beaten on a race through the city as punishment. Arnold's friend and fellow archivist Luca Volpetti is convinced this must be the Gobbo in the riddle. But what about the condottiero? There's no sign of one near the Rialto. No, the obvious candidate can be found on the other side of the Grand Canal, outside the great church of Giovanni e Paolo in Castello. And here he is. Bartolomeo Colleone was a master tactician of the 15th century, a general much in demand among the combative states of the time. He changed sides regularly for money, like any mercenary, and ended up as Captain General of the Venetian Republic after they outbid Milan for his talents. When he died in 1475, possibly poisoned by the Venetians that employed him, fearing he was about to abandon them again, he left a sum of money for a martial horseback statue to be raised in San Marco as a tribute. He meant, of course, the Piazza San Marco, but the Venetians, being die-hard Republicans, had no intention of allowing anyone, let alone a foreigner, to have their statue in the most important square in the city. Instead, they pulled a trick. Next to the church of Giovanni e Paolo is the Scuola San Marco, once a lay religious brotherhood, now the entrance to Venice's main hospital. They took Colleone's money and got Andrea del Verrocchio to design this rather terrifying figure on horseback, the work of an artist who was a mentor to Leonardo da Vinci. It's not based on life. Verrocchio seemingly never met Colleone, but is meant as a testament to a condottiero at the height of his powers. And yes, he has a fearsome gaze. But where, hereabouts, is that hunchback? Just across the square in the tiny Museum of Pathological Anatomy, Andrea Vessalio. And no, we're not going to go in there, nor am I going to show you a photo of the hunchback concerned, even though I have one in my research files for this book. It is quite an extraordinary find, and one I think you need to see for yourself, though a bit of Googling could get you there too. So that's clue 1. What next? Red marble where the Virgin holds back plague. Arnold and Luca are quite stumped by this one, and Lizzie, a total stranger to Venice, highly amused that two such knowledgeable chaps don't have a clue which way to turn. Arnold knows someone who does. Ugo Abate, a retired carabinieri officer, now owner of a small tucked-away bar. Ugo points them in the right direction and warns them it's not easy to find. Nor is it. Hidden away in a labyrinth of winding alleys behind the vast estate of the Priory of the Knights of Malta, in this corner of Castello you'll find a cul-de-sac called Corte Nova, a common street name in Venice, but this one has a very uncommon feature. Venice was a city of traders, often taking in vessels from all over the Mediterranean, a sure way to lay it open to the deadly perils of plague. They were so frequent that two of the greatest churches in the city, Salute in Dorsoduro and Redentore on Giudecca, were built to give thanks for the end of periods of pestilence that would take the lives of thousands. Here in Corte Nova is a much more modest memory of those times. The plague of 1630 took the lives of a third of the population, then 140,000, almost 3 times the number of residents around today. During this desperate time, a woman called Giovanna painted a portrait of the Virgin on the Sottoportego here, the passageway between 2 buildings, and prayed for protection from the illness ravaging the city. No one in the little street fell sick. More votive paintings of saints joined the Virgin on the walls. Twice during the 19th century there were outbreaks of cholera in the city, but never in Corte Nova. And when the Austrians bombed Venice during World War I, no shells fell there either. A plaque at one entrance to the Sottoportego records all this, and there in the middle is a red marble flagstone to mark the sanctity of the place. Clue 2 ticked off. What next? 8 great dead lie in holy water. Let's walk back towards San Marco. In the story, Arnold and Lizzie have been summoned to talk to Capitano Valentina Fabbri, the sharp and likeable carabinieri officer, whose station is a former religious building in the Campo San Zaccaria. She's astonished Arnold hasn't grasped that clue straight away. The answer lies next door, in the church of San Zaccaria, a lovely place that's just a short walk from the busy waterfront near the Doge's palace, but still found by few visitors. Now, because of Venice's unique nature, buildings great and small built over mud and a forest of buried tree trunks, it's rare to have anything underground, even a cellar, but San Zaccaria and the derelict Palazzo that should be Lizzie's are unusual. San Zaccaria has a crypt, a quiet, atmospheric place you pay a little extra to see, walking downstairs into a subterranean chapel where lagoon water often laps on ancient stone, and the air's musty and damp. There's precious little to see except an altar and a statue, perhaps of the Madonna, I really don't know. This area is one of the oldest developed parts of the city, once the property of Benedictine nuns who sold their gardens to the Doge for development. They were where the Basilica and the Piazza San Marco stand today. It was also the place where early doges were buried, the great dead of the riddle, somewhere beneath that still clear water that's so often leaking into San Zaccaria's ancient crypt. Clue 3 solved, and really Arnold shouldn't have needed Valentina Fabri's help on that one. Now, the Hound of the Lord and the Lily where water once ran. For this, Arnold and Lizzie must cross the Grand Canal to Dorsoduro to talk to an academic churchman Luca Volpetti thinks may be able to help with a puzzle that's beyond the three of them. Keen to cheer up Lizzie, Arnold takes her the local way, not by Vaporetto but on a traghetto, one of the large gondola-like boats that work as ferries across the Grand Canal at set locations. €2 a trip for visitors, even less for locals, a lot cheaper than a gondola ride and very handy too if you just want to make the short crossing, in this instance from the Valaresso Vaporetti landings near San Marco over to Salute. This is where Arnold has an appointment with the churchman at the Patriarchal Seminary. It's a place that's closed to the general public, as is the small astronomical observatory on the roof where they're taken to survey this part of Dorsoduro. It is there, honestly. After slightly questioning the pair about their motives and their feelings, he guides them to Zattere, the long promenade that runs by the Giudecca Canal. Zattere means rafts. This was once a busy commercial area. Now it's mainly residential, quiet, and a lovely place for a walk from the needle point of the old customs buildings at the tip of Dorsoduro down to the busy Vaporetto stop of Zattere itself. And there lies the answer. Let's deal with the where water once ran part first. Everybody believes Venice has hundreds of canals. Strictly speaking, this isn't correct. There are only 3 canals by name, the Grand, the Cannaregio, and the Giudecca. Every other waterway is regarded as a rio, a river. But lots of old water channels have been filled in over the years too, which is why you'll often come across the term Rio Terra. It means you found something that's been turned from rio to paved street. The best known is probably Via Garibaldi, the busy broad thoroughfare in Castello. It was Napoleon who decided that needed to be filled in and cobbled. There's one near the Zattere Vaporetto stop too, the Rio Terra Foscarini, and at the foot, by the Giudecca Canal, a church generally known as the Gesuati, though originally it was in the hands of the Dominicans, who once controlled most of this area. How's your Latin? Dominicans, the Hound of the Lord, Domini Canis. The order is often symbolized by a lily, and by a dog too, though when our inquisitive pair finally find what they're looking for, there's another surprise. Where water once ran doesn't simply refer to the Rio Terra Foscarini. The object they seek lies above a former water channel that once ran under the church itself. Clue 4 solved, halfway through, and now they get tougher. Black marble, saintly over old bones and the 8-point star. Well, that's pretty cryptic. At this stage, Arnold is getting desperate. He knows these points on the map of Venice should describe something like a circle. Logic then dictates the next place must lie somewhere in Dorsoduro beyond Zattere, a church by the sound of it. But where to start? As the two of them take a light lunch outside the Osteria ai Pugni, Luca comes up with a list of the possibilities, and it seems daunting. Churches, Arnold knows, lots he doesn't, some closed, some abandoned or turned to other uses. The pair try a few and see no sign of black marble or any 8-point star, though Lizzie is beginning to like this game, like her guide too. Desperate, Arnold leads Lizzie into the little visited area of Santa Marta and the church of San Niccolo dei Mendicoli, a lovely, very old place that featured in that classic movie Don't Look Now. No luck. Then Lizzie reminds him he's forgotten part of the clue. Saintly. A face palm follows, then Arnold finds a tiny alley near San Basilio, just along from the cafe where the artist Modigliani, who makes a brief appearance in this tale, once lived. Ognissanti, All Saints. That's the name of a narrow waterway so hidden behind the Zattere promenade, even Arnold's never been there. Somewhere along, he finds a religious building, the Ognissanti Church. There's an astonishing and very ornate interior, and a bookish monk poring over volumes amidst the wooden carvings of an anteroom. A talkative chap who tells them they're the second lot of visitors that day, and their predecessors were asking after black marble, old bones, and an 8-point star too. And there's the marble and the star in the aisle, covering what was once the burial place for the local clergy. Old bones. Our persistent pair are getting somewhere, and the riddles are turning harder all the time. In wood the secret fellow sits by chained and sightless fury. Although perhaps this one shouldn't be so tough. Luca Volpetti's cracked it already, we discover, as clouds of rumour and controversy begin to swirl around Lizzie. He thinks his English friend should have got there too, for a very good reason. The answer lies just round the corner from Arnold's bachelor apartment near the Church of St. Pantalon. Though in fairness, the secret fellow sits surrounded by such an amazing collection of Venetian artistry, it's understandable why you might miss it. Squalors, literally schools, are a very old Venetian institution. During the height of the Republic, they were lay religious fraternities that vied with one another for the finest artists. The Scuola San Rocco sits next to the great Frari Church, and its own smaller church too. San Rocco is a saint associated with the relief of plague, which, given Venice's penchant for pestilence, made him quite a popular fellow. Now, we're all too familiar with the word quarantine, though few people realise the term originated here in Venice from the word quarantena, which meant the 40 days crews and their cargo had to stay in isolation in the lagoon before being allowed into the city. The church has a rather disturbing painting of San Rocco ministering to plague victims. It was painted by an aspiring young artist Tintoretto, whose work was so admired he was entered into a competition to paint the walls and ceilings of the largest scuola across the way. An ambitious chap, he somehow found a way to get round the rules, sneak in and place an actual painting of San Rocco in his glory on the ceiling. All he was supposed to do, like his rivals, was supply some drawings. Anyway, he won, and that is why the Scuola San Rocco is the place it is today, mostly decorated on both floors by the work of a single artist over 20 years. Arnold, like most visitors, was overwhelmed by Tintoretto whenever he walked in, most of all by the monumental crucifixion, an IMAX movie in paint. Tintoretto's masterpieces, more than 60 of them, dominate the place, though you'll also find Titian and Giambattista Tiepolo in there too. But they're not the only artistic wonders. The main upstairs room of the Sala Capitolari is lined with walnut panels decorated with allegorical sculptures, the work of one Francesca Pianta, a century after Tintoretto. They're cryptic to say the least, and quite exquisite in detail, figures representing melancholy, ignorance, good and evil, and curiosity. There's a carving of a bearded painter, perhaps meant to be Tintoretto, though given Pianta wasn't born until 4 decades after Tintoretto's death. Who knows? A little way along you'll find a winged angel, blindfolded, furious. Next to him, a bookcase so perfectly carved you think you could pull out a volume and begin to read. On the other side, there's a figure hiding inside a billowing cloak beneath a floppy hat, a spy with natty black boots. Venice at the time was a nest of them, and had plenty of spies itself to send out into the world. How could Arnold have missed that one? Take a walk around the Scuola San Rocco itself, and I think you'll probably understand it is quite a place. Now to the penultimate puzzle, number 7. Traitor, not a traitor, nor painter, homeless by the dolphin and the anchor, lock called by Thie, MCCCX. Where to begin? With a tip from Valentina Fabri, it so happened, after Arnold and Lizzie have been summoned for another sly interrogation. Valentina has pointed them to one of the more curious additions to the City Statuary, a piece in one of the busiest streets in town, the narrow alley by the Piazza Clock Tower. It's up high in an arch, the head and shoulders of an old woman posed at a window, a heavy mortar in her hands, looking as if she's about to tip it down on anyone lurking below. Here I introduce a little of what I guess might be called metafiction. Arnold talks about meeting the late John Julius Norwich, the great historian of Venice, at a book event in Waterstones in Piccadilly. Truth is, that was me. I shared the table next to him at a Christmas book signing, an event that was sparsely attended, so we had the opportunity to chat. A lovely, knowledgeable fellow. Arnold consults the history of Venice, which he has in e-book on his phone, and discovers why Valentina sent him there. The old woman lived here back in 1310 when a local noble called Baiamonte Tiepolo raised a rebellion against the then doge. It failed bloodily after the old woman, perhaps annoyed by the racket, threw a mortar out of the window and killed Tiepolo's flag-bearer. Tiepolo, there's the clue. Better known as a family of painters, this early chap bearing the name was anything but a traitor, not a painter, and not a traitor either according to some, but a worthy opponent of a tyrannical doge. The code then stands for Locus Columnae Baiamonte Teopoli, the location of the column of Baiamonte Tiepolo in 1310. In other words, the place where a column marking Tiepolo's palace, destroyed after the rebellion, once stood. The dolphin and the anchor? That's a clue where to find it. They were the symbols of a printer called Aldus Manutius, who started a revolution in publishing by creating cheap, mass-printed copies of popular works, a key element in the Renaissance. He was a Venetian, naturally, and a close confidant of some of the historical characters in this tale set around Lucrezia Borgia, among them her lover Pietro Bembo. Here's Manutius's old print works, now marked with a plaque, and just along the street, a simple slab in the pavement, the memorial Arnold and Lizzie have been seeking. One last clue, then the prize should be in sight. Lady L, you must be left to last. Replace those beautiful eyes that others may look around and truly find you. Arnold has an inkling about this one. He remembers a trip to Sicily with his late wife and a visit to the beautiful town of Syracusa and the ancient island of Ortygia, which goes back to Greek times. There they encountered the story of Saint Lucia, one of many young Christian converts martyred by a vengeful Roman administration. In Lucia's case, it was in a particularly gruesome way. Her eyes were supposedly torn out before she was killed. In one of those strange episodes of church history, Lucia's supposed remains came to be scattered across Italy, some in a church named after her in Venice, a church torn down in the 19th century to make way for the city's railway station, which is still called Santa Lucia. The saint's rather creepy remains can still be seen in another church a little way along the Grand Canal, San Geremia. But this doesn't fit with the circle on the map of Venice the two are trying to close. One last tip sends them on their way, back towards Rialto and another church, Santi Apostoli, one connected with the last clue they solved and a familiar name Tiepolo. This time it's not a rebellious noble but a painter, Giambattista, and his dramatic portrayal of Lucia's Last Communion, with her eyes in a dish on the ground. The line back to the first clue, Il Gobbo in his glassy tomb, closes the circle. Somewhere along that last section lies the portrait of Lucrezia Borgia that might solve all of Lizzie's problems, where, in a place I made up, you can explore the area where I describe it, but there's nothing like it there at all. This is a work of fiction after all, but I hope you've enjoyed this tour of the more arcane locations of the Borgia portrait. I wanted to show there's more, far more to Venice than the Piazza San Marco and the Rialto, and these curiosities are just a foretaste.